Please be seated. The event is about to begin.
يرجى منكم التكرم بالجلوس. سيبدأ الحدث بعد قليل.
Please be seated. The event is about to begin.
يرجى منكم التكرم بالجلوس. سيبدأ الحدث بعد قليل.
Assalamu alaikum. Hello everyone. Maybe let's just wait for a bit of quiet. If I can have everyone's attention, please. Thank you. Okay, so first of all, well done everyone. We've made it through the first week of WEP, so give yourselves a round of applause. Yeah, so we're halfway through now. I hope the last couple of days have been enriching for you in some ways, maybe learned something new, had some fun. Actually, we want you to tell us. And speaking of this, at the end of every session you've attended last week, you've received a survey, and you will continue receiving them for the sessions of this week. So we'd really appreciate it if you could please share your honest feedback, so it'll be helpful for us to know how the program has been for you, if there's anything we need to work more on to make it even better for the next year. Of course, if you've already done so, thank you very much for that. Okay, so without saying much, today we will have an exciting panel discussion under the topic of educational outliers, which will be moderated by Professor Omar Kiniu, who is a faculty here at KAUST at the AMCS program, also the interim vice president of the Educational and Academic Affairs. So please help me in welcoming him to the stage.
Thank you very much. Good evening, everyone. I would like to take a few minutes to introduce our distinguished panelists. I will introduce them one at a time and call them on stage. I would like to welcome Dr. Taghreed AlSaraj. Dr. Taghreed is currently the General Manager of Education and Talent Development at the Museum Commission, Ministry of Culture in Saudi Arabia. She previously held various positions in prominent universities overseas, including UC Berkeley, the University of London, and the University of Miami. She is also an opinion columnist for Arab News, a best-selling author, an international public speaker, and a certified leadership coach with a passion for entrepreneurship and long life learning. She is the recipient of numerous awards, including the Saudi British Council Award for Societal Impact for her work in Saudi in 2019. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Taghreed to the panel. I would also like to welcome Dr. Charlotte Horlyck. Dr. Charlotte is an art historian at London University School of Oriental and African Studies, where she concurrently holds the post of Head of the School of Art and of Reader in Korean Art History. She led several learning and teaching-related initiatives, including the initiation of a postgraduate diploma and a master's program in museum studies, sponsored by the Saudi Museums Commission. Her research focuses on Korean pre-modern and modern visual and material culture, collecting practices and public displays of Korean art. She is a prolific award-winning author. Her recent works include The Emergence of the Korean Art Collector and The Korean Art Market, both published in 2024. Her earlier monograph on Korean art in 2017 was awarded the Henrik Hamel Book Prize, and her co-edited volume on Korean art history was selected for a Republic of Korea Ministry of Education Award in 2015. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Charlotte to the panel. Next, I'd like to call on Dr. Arwa Al-Aama, who is currently advisor to the provost at KAUST, where she directs the division's partnership and student recruitment efforts. She is the first Saudi female professor in the fields of computing and information technology. She has an impressive track record in the public, private, and academic sectors. Professor Arwa served as vice mayor for IT in Jeddah, where her work on digital transformation was recognized by the municipality 20 prestigious awards, including Best Arab E-Government from the Arab League. She also served as a technology advisor to the Ministry of Economy and Planning, to the Saudi Ministry of Hajj and Umrah, and as an advisor to the Digital Economy Center. Professor Alwa also held several leadership positions in academia, namely as Vice Dean of the College of Computing and Information Technology at KAU, and as head of the Computer Science and Information Systems departments. She is the recipient of several national and international scientific and professional awards, including the National Saudi Achievement Award from the Ministry of Communication and Information Technology, the Information Expert Award from the Arab Towns Organization. Please join me in welcoming Professor Arwa to the panel. Last but not least, I'd like to welcome Dr. Sultan Albarakati, who is the Executive Director of KAUST Academy at KAUST, and serves as team leader for the Saudi National Team for Mathematics. Dr. Sultan has played an instrumental role advancing STEM initiatives and enhancing human capacity across the kingdom. He was the architect of KAUST Academy's university specialization programs in artificial intelligence, bioinformatics, and cybersecurity. Additionally, he leads the KAUST Gifted Student Program and the Saudi Research Science Institute, RSI, focusing on nurturing the kingdom's brightest mind and preparing them for success at top Saudi universities. His contributions to education have been widely recognized, including a certificate of appreciation from the Minister of Education for his impact on STEM education and the Employee of the Year Award at the Royal Commission in Yanbu, where he led many award-winning teams, namely in the Mathematics Olympiad. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Sultan to the panel. All right, so now the most difficult part of my job is over. I'd like to give you a little bit of an outline of our program tonight. We're going to start by giving each of our panelists an opportunity for an introductory remark on their own experiences in the education realm and on outliers of their choosing, and then we're going to engage on a discussion among ourselves first, namely on various topics, including evolution of learning models, cross-disciplinary innovation, personal journeys, trends in education, and then conclude with a few takeaways. So without further ado, let me join my seat and launch with our program tonight. Maybe I first turn to Dr. Taghreed and ask her to go for a brief introduction to her own experiences and to touch on a topic of her choosing and among several of our various themes tonight. Dr. Taghreed.
So this is to reflect?
This is to introduce yourself and your personal experience.
You did a wonderful introduction.
I did the bio, but now is your turn.
My name is Dr. Taghreed AlSaraj. I'm the GM of Education and Talent Development at the Museum Commission, which is under the Ministry of Culture. I am very fortunate that I have this job to develop educational programs with my imagination. My love is for education, and I want to mix education and motivation. And so we know that when people are motivated, they learn the most. So I come and develop training programs, educational programs that has that element of motivation for them to continue. Hence, we highlight the program that we're going to talk about soon with SOAS University, the program that did not exist, but we developed it together and made it more instead of a theory base, but it's theory and hands-on, and made it a postgraduate diploma and or a master's level in museum studies. Amongst other programs that we developed in the commission is using VR experience within the museum. So we have museum challenges and have people, we send them internationally to get the best practices experience and come to Saudi, but at the same time, we have challenges now that and if you're following us on social media, you'll see that we've developed a program, it's a competition about using VR in museums. Everybody thinks maybe museums are typical, boring. We want to get the technology in the museums, and I do encourage all of you to apply because we still have seats left. So I think that's a wrap for the things that I do on a daily basis here.
Thank you very much, Dr. Taghreed. Dr. Charlotte?
Hello, everybody, and thank you for coming. It's a pleasure to be here, and thank you to the organizers for inviting me. So at SOAS, I have for many years been leading on learning and teaching developments. So currently I serve as the head of School of Arts, but prior to then, my main administrative task, if you like, was to lead on learning and teaching curriculum development. And now, in my role as head of School of Arts, I oversee that. I think So in those roles, a key priority has been how to continuously improve our curriculum and teaching to make it relevant for the current student market, as well as society as a whole, including within a transnational context. Because of course, I mean, some of you may know, but SOAS stands for the School of Oriental and African Studies. So what we do at SOAS is that we offer research and teaching on the regions covering all the way from Africa to the near Middle East, Southeast Asia and East Asia. So for example, in my own School of Arts, we don't teach Western music, we don't teach Western art, but we teach on the regions that, as I said, SOAS has a known specialism for. And hence, this was one of the reasons why we were, I think, approached by the Museum Commission and had this opportunity to develop this wonderful program that you will hear more about. So thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Charlotte. Dr. Arwa?
Yes, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. I'm very happy to be here among the brilliant audience that I see today, the people who, many of them might be the future professors and the future researchers that their countries will be very proud of. I wanted to just mention a story, a small story, that happened to me in reality, and that is when I was a professor of computer science at a university. And then I went, as Professor Omar said, I went to the municipality, I worked for 12 years, and I came back to the university. And then I was teaching a cybersecurity course. And before I left the university and went to the municipality, I was one of the brilliant teachers in my own world, at least I thought I was, where I thought that people loved my courses, and I always had full sections and people fighting for me to open more sections, and I was amazingly very popular among students. So I went to the municipality, I worked for 12 years, then I came back, and I still had that persona, and I had a lot of people applying for my classes. And all of a sudden, at one point, I was in a class explaining a few things about cybersecurity, and I felt that I was very boring. And I could sense it on people's faces that probably the way you teach should change. With 12 years' time, everything has changed. So I felt that this is not the style that I want my students to see me at. And it wasn't the style that I was normally popular for, where everybody's excited and engaged and all that. So I went back home. I was very depressed to see that maybe I am boring. Maybe I need to change, go back to the municipality and do hands-on again, computer science. But I decided to think out of the box. I started monitoring the children in my family around me and see what they like. And I realized that everybody's using games. Everybody's on their phones, everybody's engaged with the internet. It's true that when I went to the municipality, all these things were there, but the mentality and the way people perceive things has changed. Now we have ChatGPT, now we have this and that, we have everything at the, you just press and get anything, any type of information you want. We get presentations ready, we get everything in minutes. So I decided that I'm gonna change my style of teaching. And that's when I decided I'm gonna have the students play games. So that semester, I started shifting my gear from giving traditional lectures and discussions to game playing. So one of the games was, okay, I'm gonna leave you to be on your own for the next week. You guys are gonna work in groups, you're gonna create games, and you're gonna come back to me and tell me what you learned. And I realized that they started playing games. They were very happy, of course. And they started, creating amazing games. They created not only computerized games, some of them did, but they actually had, board games. They had everything you can think of related to cybersecurity. And then one student came to me and said, you know what? We almost hacked a professor. And that was, amazingly dangerous in my opinion. However, that lesson, they were talking about ethical hacking. So I started realizing that teaching is evolving, everything changed, and I started being the popular professor again. Not because they're playing games, but now because they really realized what computer security means, what cybersecurity means, what hacking means, what social engineering means, but they did it hands-on. So I think, having said that, teaching is changing drastically, and right now when we are talking about outliers, can you just imagine if this world had classes where the students would plan their own teaching, their own methodology? I think this would be the perfect world going further, because science is advancing and changing and learning styles are changing. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Arwa. Dr. Sultan.
Thank you, Professor Omar. Hello, everyone. I am really glad to have you, to be with us today, and thanks for the WEP team for organizing this, to be part of this distinguished panelist. If I just want to talk about myself a little bit, I was honored to be a PhD student for Professor Omar Kniou. I did my PhD with him for 5 years. After that, I went to NEOM for a couple of years, and now I came back as a instructional faculty here in KAUST. Then I'm serving as a director of KAUST Academy under the supervision of Professor Omar as well. So I believe this is an honor to me and to my team as well. So in the academy, what we do, so we see ourselves as a platform to KAUST. We have a mandate to serve the country in different aspects. We think that we can contribute in a lifelong learning era. So we have different programs that we organize. We work with the high school students, we work with university students, we work with professionals. If I want to talk about each of these 3 pillars in brief, for the high school students, as Professor Omar mentioned in the introduction, we work with the gifted students for a program called KGSP, where we send students, high school students who already graduated to study abroad. And we worked also with the gifted students in SRSI, where this program worked during the summer, and we work with students to prepare them to work with the researcher and faculty, and to do research and participate in international competitions and national competitions. And also we are collaborating with Mawhiba to work with them to train students in different programs, such as math Olympiads and other areas where I'm leading is in the kingdom. This is when it comes to the high schoolers. When for the university programs, so we developed an interesting programs. You know, KAUST is a graduate program, and we see that the undergrad university students in Saudi Arabia are becoming better and better with time, but we see that there is a gap that we can work with our students. So we organize a program that we call it specialization. We work with students in different emerging technologies area like AI, cybersecurity, bioinformatics, and just recently add renewable energy. And I believe this program getting popular. This year we have more than 17,000 students apply to our program. And we just last week finished our training programs for more than 1,700 in different areas around the kingdom. And we prepare the students to attend an excellent summer school where we have some of our students here in KAUST or abroad, such as Cambridge, Harvard, MIT, Oxford, and Toronto, and other universities. For the professional side, we work with the government and private sectors and design courses that tailor to their need. For example, we are working with the Ministry of Interior, where we design a special master degree part-time, and our faculty travel to Riyadh every other weekend to deliver the courses. And we are engaged with different organizations and ministries to design short courses in micro-credential for the area that related to KAUST, for example, in AI, cybersecurity, and maybe marine science. And this is the brief that what we do, and I hand this to Omar. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sultan. I think, after this round of opening remarks, I think if I go back and see what I learned in the takeaways, we can certainly throw away all the plans that we have for follow-on questions, because if I go in order, I learned about the importance of motivation and inspiration. I learned about virtual reality. I learned about the importance of modernizing and prioritizing modernization of curricula. I learned about evolving perceptions and evolving means of delivery, and also about the intersection of education and research, collaboration and scalability. And this is only through the first round of introduction. So even though we had a plan, we sort of didn't need a plan, but I can take it there. And what was also interesting to me, also in panels, and I guess this is speaking to an outlier, when the opening remarks were being given, I was looking at the audience, and I really am hard-pressed to tell you that there was anybody looking at their phone or being diverted or playing a game or trying to crack into somebody else's computer account. So I guess everybody was really focused on the topic and on the introduction. Having said that, I still want to go through at least some of the themes that we could touch on. Maybe start, because this already came up, and picking one by looking at the role of technology and evolving technology that is playing a role, and how you see it impacting at least whether it's the development of curricula delivery, or actually the offerings and the enterprise as a whole. So maybe I start with you, Dr. Taghreed, and see if we can get some additional perspective on this theme.
So for our sectors and the museums, we have initiatives to modernize and digitize the museum itself. And part of it is that when we want to have education elements in it, we also need to motivate the learners or the participants and give them an experience when they come and visit, either with the school trips or their family, that we wanted that to capture them within the technology sector. So my team and I, we came up with the idea of developing a competition, a VR competition, which we just launched. I think the classes started last week. So part of it is that we know not everybody knows how to program and code and transfer a story into a VR experience. So what we said, well, we wanted to make something for the people, by the people. So we looked at our regional museums, and we launched in Asir and in Najran, that we did this competition so people can come up with a story from the region, a story that has to make sense for the region. And so it tells something, what is so unique. And then when we take them, we filter them, and then we train them for 4 months how to transfer that story into an experience, a VR experience, that the winner will be able to showcase their story as part of the exhibition. So with this, we've now actually motivated the locals to come and to participate in the production of a content for the local museum by the locals. We've gotten their interest. Their families are coming in to go and to see later on their kids, what did they participate within the local museums. But at the same time, we've also upskilled the local youth into developing these kind of coding, digitization. So we've actually upskilled them in so many ways. And my team and I always laugh at me when I say, well, how many birds can we kill with one stone? So we need to figure out if it's just one product. No. There must be other reasons why we do this, or how can we change it in order that it kills more than one bird with one stone. And I'm not for killing birds, by the way. It's just an expression. But it's always thinking of the learners and what's in it for them. What are they going to benefit from when they participate with us? And yeah, Charlotte?
Well, can I ask the audience perhaps a question? I'm keen to know. I'm aware that Dr. Taghreed and we were talking about this before the panel, but that we are essentially the only ones non-STEM, perhaps, in the room. But I think I would really like to emphasize to our audience the integration of STEM and museum studies, STEM and the cultural sector. And for some of you, this will be obvious, for others, less so. Again, the question then is, and perhaps to be honest, how many of you go to museums? How many of you would choose to visit an archaeological site? How many of you, oh, we got one? Oh, we got a few more. Okay, perhaps this side over there, not so many. But this is really interesting. And again, I ask you, what is it that makes the museum, if we, for example, of course, the cultural sector is much more than museums, but if we just focus on museums for the time being, what is it that makes the visit to a museum interesting, relevant, and fun? And this is where you'll see that the museum sector has changed enormously just over the past 10 years. Also in this country, in Europe, in my own area, I work on Korea, and it's very, very interesting to see that uses of the digital features prominently within that. But it's culturally specific. What works in some countries when it comes to incorporation of the digital within museum spaces work less effectively in other countries. For example, again, I'll use Korea as an example because I've seen that evolve massively. In a place like Korea, QR codes is a normal practice for museum visitors. So you go to a museum and you would use your mobile phone to get more information about objects. We don't see that happening in the UK as yet. And I think perhaps this is because as yet in the UK, perhaps the mobile phone is not such an integral part of people's lives as it is in certain parts of Asia. And I have a feeling that here in Saudi Arabia too, it's the uses of the digital, again, is much more foregrounded within the cultural sector. And this is where a university like KAUST comes into play. How can you use your learning, the ethos that you learn when it comes to uses of, say, AI or the digital within the cultural sector? In the museum studies program that we have developed, one of the modules is about the uses of digital media within museum spaces. And it's very, very important. We are not saying this is good, this is bad, but we are inviting discussion of how to use digital media in different contexts for different users and how to do that effectively.
Thank you, Dr. Charlotte. Maybe, Dr. Arwa, I turn to you on the same topic, but I ask you to look at maybe the flip side of the equation, at least from your experience specifically in questions related to computer science and cybersecurity. So evidently, as we heard, AI is playing a very important role in engaging with end users, with learners, in creating digital content, in bringing elements of multiple disciplines and getting them to enrich the learning experience. Could we think of the flip side of the coin, specifically when it comes to culture? Are there danger of introducing bias in at least the AI tool? Is this something that should be of concern either to the user or the developer?
Definitely, bias is known as a factor related to AI because it's not very advanced as we think it is and as we want it. AI, of course, is based on the data we feed it and the way we program it. Can I ask of the show of hands, how many of you are in AI? Okay, so we have a few. Okay, so they probably know what we're talking about in bias world. But maybe it's worth knowing that every single technology does have, the advantages and disadvantages. And I don't think it's just bias. It's also, privacy concerns, data privacy concerns. It's also over-dependency on technology. So now if we think about adding and multiplying, for example, some of us used to know how to do that, and maybe now we stopped knowing how to do that because we're so dependent on computers to do that. With the appearance of ChatGPT, which is also based on AI, I think in no time, maybe we will stop being able to write paragraphs or come up with creative ideas because ChatGPT is going to be doing it for us. And if we think about that, we need to think about who fed ChatGPT what. So maybe we can, if we think about it, if it wasn't fed with the right information, then it's probably going to give a lot of analysis that we disagree with. Having said that, I also want to touch on another subject, which is interdisciplinary interactions. And I think this is very, very important. If we think about the capstone project that we did when we did our bachelor's degree, I know most of you or all of you are probably in the graduate school, but if we think about a capstone project, when I used to give my students at computer science department capstone projects, they are all only going to think about what they need to do to satisfy the grade in the computer science world. They'll develop a software, they'll develop a system and all that. But let's think of this capstone project if it wasn't based on a college, but rather a university-level capstone project. It would be great. Again, it's one of the dreams that maybe we will have, but let's suppose the computer science department students will work in a group to develop, let's say, an application or a system. Maybe the College of Engineering, they'll have another group that's working in parallel with this group to develop the prototype. And then maybe the College of Business can do marketing for this and a feasibility study for this. And at the end, these three groups maybe can have a real working model that they can sell. They can come up with a project that can actually be their business. So I think interdisciplinary, although we talk about it a lot, but I don't think yet in the world it's really cross-sector like I would think it should be.
Thank you, Dr. Arwa. On the same theme of technology and AI, Sultan, this is an area where, as you mentioned, KAUST Academy is focused quite intensely in delivering a great service in terms of upskilling, of training as many people that can be trained. This is an area from a market perspective that brings about different stresses because people, entities, organizations, small and large, who are entering into this area and this market sector are not necessarily the traditional players like universities. Do you see a danger from this competition, both in terms of what content gets delivered and maybe a threat from of these other delivery agents that are not traditionally in the education sector, whether they're small companies or even large ones like the Amazons and the Googles?
Yes, it's a very interesting question, Omar, but if you allow me, I just want to touch base about scalability when you mention it. I mentioned in my brief that we have more than 15,000 or 17,000 applied to our programs, and we always discuss with the team how we can work with them, how we can train them, and how we can select the best of them. So if we go to the merit base, it will be its tricky part. And what we decided with the team is to work in online platforms and using AI tools to work with the students. How do we do that? Normally, for any students who's taking classes with, for example, a platform like Coursera, when we discuss it with the team there, they told us one of the issues that we have with this, with the subscriber in general, less than 6 or 7% of the subscriber, they finish the course. And one of the issues that they have is the participant or the one who's taking the course find difficult to finish the course because it might be difficult for him or maybe is not clear. So when we think with the team, we add another component to this, and we organize online training for all the students. And accidentally, and actually we were really happy with the result, more than 70% of the students were able to finish all the courses, which was really, recognized even by the CEO, and I think these days they are talking about publishing about this, adding synchronized and asynchronized to the online learning. And speaking for your question, Omar, so if I remember, your question is how the companies are reflect to or react to the AI.
Are they affecting the market? Are they a competition? Is there a threat? Is there a role of partnership? How do you see them?
So based in the academy, when we communicate with the organization, like as you mentioned, small or big, what is the most difficult part that we face is that the threat that came from the AI. So since AI is, as Professor Arwa mentioned, that it's biased, and it depends mainly on the material that we feed to the engine, that we might not satisfy with the result that we get in. So this is one of the concerns that we see with the organizations.
Thank you, Sultan. Maybe I turn to go again, maybe get the panel to dig a little bit in this question of change, and has really been, touched upon in all of the fields that we mentioned and all the domains, whether they're in traditional classrooms, whether they're in museum experiences. Are there gaps right now, or any specific signposts for change that you are actually watching for? And how is the organization gearing up in order to meet some of these challenges? So I might, maybe if I get you, Dr. Taghreed, to look at that, at least reflecting on the most immediate change, and if you see anything that is on this pathway of evolution in the way that we are, designing, delivering our content.
So that's a very, very good question, and it's a deep question, and I think also Charlotte needs to help me in this. There's always a gap in every educational institution that I've worked with, and every country that I've worked with, between the UK, US. I usually guest lecture in Waseda in Tokyo. Always there is a gap of what the output of educational system or institution produces and what the job market or the business sector needs. And because of the slow reaction to the development of the business sector, we all know education is very heavy, and curriculum needs to be put, and there's a lot of validation, and so there's a lot of paperwork. So in order to get to it where it is now, so it can't be changed very quickly to go follow with the business sector and the trends that's happening. And so with that, I think in our program that we designed with SOAS about the museum studies master program and the postgraduate diploma, it defies that. Because at that point, for me, in the commission, we've seen we need the output, and we don't have that output. And then when we sought SOAS, they have the knowledge. So then we said, well, what we need is actually hands-on, a lot of hands-on instead of just theory. There's a lot of programs out there, and why can't I just give scholarships and send these students outside? But then there was a lot of challenges. We have the brain drain. We were looking for people to come to work in the Saudi sector in our museums. Then we looked at it and say, well, when we develop this program, how much chunk of it will be in Saudi? And then we want the hands-on and the expertise of the British. And so we worked out, and we did so many workshops, decided to see, well, how much would it be theory, and how many hours in Saudi, and how many hours in the UK, in order to get that mixture. And we came up with, well, I think Charlotte can reinforce this, that we came up with a formula that hasn't been out there until now. That it has the components of the local expertise, the international expertise, the theory, and the hands-on. And there came the program with SOAS, the postgraduate diploma. It has elements in Saudi to be taught, and then a 1-month program training and teaching in SOAS campuses, as well as inside the actual museums. Either the British, the V&A, the Science Museum, in order to get that hands-on that we actually really need in Saudi. So we know the market and what it needs, and then this program came up of a hybrid. And when we did our, just last year, we did the first inaugural conference, the Education and Innovation in Museums Conference in Riyadh. Adam Habib was the guest speaker, and he revealed the program that we developed here is now being sought after to be replicated in China, in the Far Asia, and I'm going to leave Charlotte to comment on that and to see the ripple effect of this kind of programs.
Charlotte, please.
Well, thank you. So indeed, the unique aspects of this program are such that it's delivered for the Museums Commission to align with the 2030 Saudi vision. And of course, Saudi Arabia is not unique in terms of wanting to use the culture in its historical traditions as the means to instill national consciousness, foster tourism, strengthen the nation as a whole. And we see similar parallels elsewhere, where there is also a want to strengthen the cultural sector, but a real need of education in terms of how to do so, which is why, for example, in Indonesia, they were very keen on what we have developed with the Museums Commission in partnership with Effort University and the Imam Abdul Rahman University. So that's, for example, an example of where being a leader in certain fields by innovating programs have this wonderful ripple effect. Because we are not simply mirroring it in other regions, but we have a model that we can use and effectively build on. And I think that's really what's very successful. If I could just add to the points about the need or the challenges of change in education. Again, it goes back to, I think, the reasons why we've delivered this program is that there is the need in Saudi Arabia for an educated workforce to take up the positions in the cultural sector. So this is where it's so important that universities are able to be agile and nimble enough to cater to the workplace and the job market. And I think it's that agility that can often be very challenging for universities. Because what we see, of course, is that the workplace is moving so rapidly. And I would say that universities, by nature, tend to be quite traditional places, in particular when it comes to the humanities. So how can we align those two movements of speed, essentially? I think that's one of the challenges. The other challenge, of course, are also the financial challenges that we are really seeing globally. And I think it's worth mentioning that this particular program is offered at a lower price point than what we offer for overseas students at SOAS. So it's a program that's catered to local students at a price point that is what we would call forms part of our equitable partnership mandate. So that's very important.
Thank you. Go ahead, Dr. Taghreed. Of course you can.
Yeah, so what this program is so valuable because it also transfers knowledge to the locals. So yes, expertise coming in internationally, but transfers that the local knowledge. And I want to announce something, that this is the first that we've said it in the media, that since we did the program, we already got the accreditation from the British side. And I'm happy to say before our cohorts, the first cohort is finishing off, they're waiting actually for their results. They finished their studies, but they're waiting for the results. Before the results are coming out, we already got the Saudi accreditation. And this is the first of its kind to get this kind of accreditation from the Ministry of Education within the first year, same year that the students are going to graduate from. Usually it takes us a while, a year or two, and now we're in the same year we're getting it. So that's how popular this program is getting, and the students are really happy. And we've already now, just to give you hints, we've already started acceptance for the next cohort in Jeddah, in Effat University in SOAS, as well as Imam Abdurrahman University in Dammam. So this program will be taught in 2 separate universities across the country. And next year, we're going to bring it to Riyadh.
Thank you, Dr. Taghreed. I think in the big world of accreditation, doing it within the first cycle is certainly an outlier, because typically it takes years and many cycles and an inordinate amount of past history in order to overcome that activation barrier. So congratulations. Dr. Arwa, from our perspective, any gaps, any side that we need to overcome, any challenges, any shifts that you see from our area?
I think there are key themes in the evolution of learning models in general. And I think perhaps the most important ones are the fact that the world is changing from teacher-centered classes to learner-centered. So I think if we're developing programs, or if we're students or what have you, or we're professors, I think it's very important to start focusing on the customer, who is the student, in developing any courses. The other thing is that one of the key themes is the integration of technology as part of learning. So although maybe here it's a STEM college and all the programs are related to technology one way or another, but overall in the world it's very important to know that we can use technology in many different ways, far more than what we think we can. So technology should be an enabler, whether it's in testing, training, what have you. We have a lot of ways and a lot of tools that can help us in using them to create personalized learning, if you will. The other thing is that, going back to the question of bias, although computing does cause bias and AI causes bias, the technology also enabled us to include more people. So the outreach is amazing by using computers, and it will enable us to provide learning to people who never ever thought they can learn. It's important to know that now we have a program in the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia particularly, where every organization must have accessible platforms. So even people with different needs should be able to reach. People in rural areas should be able. And as Dr. Taghreed was saying, their program might be hybrid. So I think the availability of technology is really causing a bigger advantage than a disadvantage with this case of bias and inclusion. So we're able to include more people into learning. And maybe the last point I wanted to make is that lifelong and flexible learning is key as we move forward. So we're going to find a lot of people who don't want to do college and graduate school anymore because they will just do diplomas and programs like the ones my colleague Dr. Sultan is doing. So I think lifelong learning and micro-credentials and diplomas, I think that part is going to be a trend that's coming very soon.
Thank you, Dr. Arwa. Would you agree, Sultan?
Yes, 100%. And actually, to add to Dr. Arwa, one of the challenges that we have, especially when it comes to the undergrad students, is the hands-on training part. So in the academy, 80% with the programs that we are delivering, 80% of our training is more hands-on and is related to the real-life problems. So in the beginning of each year, we are seeking or asking different organizations, universities, government entities to identify use cases for us, and we are asking our students to work with that. Because most of the traditional training that we usually students, they focusing more on like memorizing and just to try to understand what is written in the textbook, and just as Dr. Arwa mentioned, that just finish the course and get the grade. But for our programs, we are focusing more in real life problems, and the students engaged a lot with us, and that's became really remarkable. And most of our organization now approaching us with more use cases that we are trying to help them to resolve it.
Thank you, Sultan. I guess you're taking that philosophy not just for external KAUST Academy, at least, is for external partners and stakeholders, but also to our own. And KAUST Academy will soon deploy similar surveys and try to gauge interest from our KAUST schools and our own high school system before students before taking these experiences to the rest of the kingdom. On the question of bias, I think it's actually an important one. I think machines are really more prone to bias than human beings, at least as they are right now. But the fixes of biased machines are much easier than the fixes of biased people, and that really is really the flip side of the equation. I think we've been going a little bit more than an hour. We've touched on a variety of topics that, if we wanted to drill on them, each one would take us a day or a lifetime in order or a book or a monograph. What I'd like to do is see if we can turn to the audience right now, see if anybody would like to engage with the panel on one of the many themes that we touched upon, from the need for change, modernization, the evolving landscape of inspiration, and so on and so on. Please.
Okay. Thank you all for the wonderful panel. My name is Abdurrahman Sabbagh. I'm an MS PhD in computer science. And I have a question specifically for Dr. Sultan, or I might say Ustaz Sultan, because I used to study in Ibn Khaldun High School and used to be there too. So you've been through multiple stages of the education system, from school to Olympiad trainer, and now to a director of the most prominent educational entities in Saudi. My question is, how did your impression of education and education delivery change over different stages that you've been through? Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. I really appreciate it. Thank you. So, education in general is evolving with time. So I remember back when I was in Yamba, I have a really nice story. When we start working with Mawhiba. At that time, Saudi Arabia participated in international competitions in mathematics. And Mawhiba, they had a very difficult mission to prepare Saudi students to compete with the international well-trained students. I remember when I was teacher at that time, they asked me to attend a 4 weeks training program in Al-Hada. When we finished the training, I found it, by the way, it's really interesting. All the problems, I didn't know about Olympiad before. All the problems were non-standard. So when we finished the program, they told us, okay, so Sultan, you are coming from Yambo, really small village. We have only 2 or 3 high school. And they said, we might not start with you guys. We will start with Jeddah, Riyadh, and Sharqiya, because we are bringing an expert overseas from the US, from China. Then I said, no, I believe that we have talent in my city, in my school, in the schools that I teach, and the other school. So I started working with them myself. I worked with them for almost a year. And at the end of that year, I constantly bothered the leader of Mawhiba to accept my students just to participate in the national competition. And finally, the guy agreed. And I remember after some time, he told me, Sultan, I accept your request, not because I was convinced, but you were really annoying. And the good thing that with the result of this national Olympiad, the top 10 students in the kingdom, 6 of them were my students. And in the international competition, usually each country participated with 6 students. In 2012, 4 were from Yambo, and 2013, 5 were from Yambo out of 6. So they said, no, this is really interesting, and I believe our students were outliers. And this is what I believe, the lesson that I got from here. Each place or each region has the talent, but we just want to give them a chance. We need to tell them that you believe on them. Trust me, I know almost just a little about Olympiad, but I was the one who was enabling the students and give them the chance to prove themselves, and they did it themselves. It's not me, it's them, because we just give them a chance. And this is my message to my team. So we told them we can't change the world, but we just want to enable the outliers that we have in the kingdom.
Thank you.
My own comment on this amazing story, Sultan, is that you're not annoying, but very determined. Please.
Well, thank you very much, Professor Amar and panelists. I really appreciate the highlight of the importance of multidisciplinary. And we were just talking about this is cross-pollination between STEM and STEAM. And the question arises in my mind, specifically because we do have on the panel the cultural aspect, museums, and we do have STEM, the science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. The question that comes in mind is actually AI right now is disturbing and disrupting many fields across. I want to hear the vision from the museum sector. How are you envisioning AI is going to transform this world? What is the visitor experience in the next couple of years? Jobs have been, changed in a way or in a sense by AI integration and so on. But what about the cultural sector? How is AI? What do you think is going to happen there? And the second part of this question, or maybe another question, is the STEM part. What do you think of your involvement in the culture sector? How are you envisioning to help the transformation there in museums, heritage, tradition, culture, and so on?
We start with STEAM.
Do you want to? Okay. For us, AI, because we're the commission, we do projects and we support the sector, and we either in the educational sector, educate people to work in the sector. So we enable them. So that's why we're coming up with all these projects that are the one I said about the VR competition to try to get digitization in our museums. And I think my colleagues are working on the barcodes as well, and to get that experience across everybody that comes through the museum will get the exact same experience, not the different storytelling by the tourist guide. But also there is a project that I'm still hopefully will be launching this year, and we're looking at replicas. And how replicas, so digitization, not maybe pure AI, but the digitization in the museum sector, it can help, we can touch and see things that we weren't able to see. The students, the young school children that can't fly out to maybe go to Paris and see the Mona Lisa, but why we can't have a replica of the Mona Lisa for them to see until someday they will go and see it themselves. This is just one example, but we are looking at getting projects that has replicas to come to the schools in order to educate our kids about these different objects around the world and what is the benefit of seeing, and what do they add to the value of our everyday life, because we do talk in the 2030 vision is about the quality of life. And going to museums, experiencing different cultures does add either the history, it has the quality of how I learn around me, the world evolves, and it's not only centered on me. And if we do that at a young age, it makes a big difference. And then we talk about stereotyping or biases. It just eliminates all of that because we're exposing them at a young age to all these different cultures from all over the world and to accept them. And for them, at one day or another, they would go and see it themselves. So those are some of the projects that we didn't even launch yet, but you made me say it, but that is coming. And we're targeting school children's only. Yeah.
Can I add to that? Your question is so relevant, and it's so difficult. I think when it comes to the use of AI and, say, from a broader perspective, the digital within the cultural sector, I think the positive aspect of that is that it can truly enhance knowledge. It can fill the gaps. For example, it can present the museum goer with an experience that would otherwise not be there. We also seen being used within archaeology. So, for example, where the original archaeological architectural structure has been lost, you can fill the gap through AI or through creating some digital version of that very same piece. So the good part of using such technologies is that it can really it can add to our widening participation goals. It can make it to a certain extent easier, more accessible for everybody to engage with culture. And that's good. But I think at the same time, the flip side is that it can take away the reflective and creative aspects of arts and culture. Do we enable individuals to engage with cultural remains in a way that enhances their own creative thinking? And from a broader perspective, then enables innovation, ambitious thinking, and so on and so on. So I think we have to be careful with how much we use the digital within the cultural sector, where and for whom and for which purposes. So that would be my advice.
Do we want to weigh in on STEAM? We don't have to. Or on STEM?
Dr. Arwa.
Okay, so of course technology is an enabler at the end. Computer scientists and experts in AI will continue to evolve, and the technology will continue to evolve. I was supervising a student, a PhD student, before I came here to KAUST a few months ago, and she was working on something state-of-the-art. And by the time we finished her proposal, a new technology came along, so we had to start from scratch. So if I answer the question now, Abdulaziz, most likely by the end of WEP, there's going to be more technologies coming out. So it's hard to predict what is going to happen in AI, but we are continuing the use of it as an enabler. There are so many different ways that we can use AI. Maybe predictions is one thing. Maybe filling the gap, like Charlotte was saying, is another thing. Maybe giving virtual reality aspects to it. Maybe in the museum you can go and have a personalized experience. You can ask them questions, they can answer you back. Online, you can have a full 3D immersive tour to any museum you want online from your own home. So there's so many ways, but it will continue to evolve.
Thank you, Dr. Arwa. You answered exactly what I was trying to say, but actually I need to advertise for the Academy. Speaking of developing AI tools, we are working with RDIA to develop AI tutoring for students, high school students or elementary school students in Arabic using AI. And inshallah, it will come soon to the audience, inshallah.
Thank you.
Hi. Thank you very much for the wonderful panel. I guess my question kind of builds off of the previous question. So you've talked about kind of embracing outlier students, and you've talked about kind of the cross-pollination of ideas and how to do that. So my question is in the theme, spirit of the theme of outliers, is how do you even create or increase the probability of outlier students graduating in the first place, right? So I know educational systems, they have, you want to empower the student, but then at the same time, how do you preserve that unique nature that will allow them to later be contributive in a unique manner to where they go later in their professional life? So, yeah, I guess that's the kind of question. So what kind of strategies or what kind of techniques do you think would empower or increase the probability of these students emerging?
Please.
Okay, I'm going to take a shot at this. So, I always believe that motivation is the key. And each person has a different motivation factor. So what motivates you is different than what motivates me and the rest of the audience. So tapping into any program, what is the key factor in the motivation? And if we connect about what this motivates us, we will join and we will develop this program or go into this program. And it is about capturing the audience's attention in a program, either designing it or wanting to go into a program that captures your attention. So there is no one set formula, unfortunately. And hence that's why students take this class and maybe they drop this class especially if it's an elective. If it's a core, that's it. They're done for it. But if it's an elective, you can then see, I'll take it, other people drop it, is because they're motivated into continuing it. And don't underestimate motivation. This is one of my key research when I was still teaching. I always focus on motivation and anxiety. And some things make people, like technology, some of it is too much for people, and it makes them anxious, and then they start and they block it. But others are so motivated into getting their hands dirty, let's say, and try to play around with it, and that's what keeps them going. So it's always different, and there's the ratio is high motivation, most probability continuing on, at the low anxiety you have. But high anxiety, the low motivation, the factors that you don't continue in doing whatever you want to do. So it's that formula, getting that balance formula in your life, in about anything. And it's not only about the technology, anything in your life.
I think it's quite a challenging question. I think my understanding of your question was how to preserve the uniqueness of, say, a program, maybe it could be a university, or so on and so on. Basically, how do you preserve the uniqueness of that, right? I think.
Both preservation and creation.
Right. I would argue that you always have to go back to the ethos of that program, say, and maintain integrity. I would say that should really be the base factor. Those 2 points should be the foundation of anything you do. Ethos, integrity. And then on that, you build excellence and responsiveness. Excellence in terms of delivery. Excellence in terms of commitment to your goals and commitment to the users, as well as responsiveness to needs. And those needs, of course, can be very broad. They can be the needs of, say, students, the needs of your university. It can be social needs. But I would say those would really be the building blocks that ideally should enable you to maintain the uniqueness of what it is you're trying to deliver. Because I guess, what is the flip side of uniqueness? Dilute. Is there something called diluteness? I don't think that's a word, but anyway, that you dilute something, right? It all becomes gray in the wash, right? You want to maintain the color, the brightness of something. I would say that would be the blocks that make that.
Please.
Okay, so I want to go back to the story I was telling you earlier. Maybe if we start with the end result that we want from students. So for example, we decide what we want the outcomes to be, and then we give some freedom and flexibility to students to find their own path. There was a program in the US many years ago that they had these schools, they called them magnets. And I don't know if anybody's familiar with these magnets, but President Clinton sent his daughter to one of these schools. And the idea was that you leave people freely to choose whatever they want to do, and they start, becoming, as a magnet, they start going towards the things they like to do, instead of giving them a structured program and telling them you have to do 1, 2, 3. Having said that, if I were to develop maybe a program now to answer your question, maybe I'll start with the outcomes that I want. So in my cybersecurity example, I told them, okay, today we're going to learn about, let's say, social engineering, and I'll just give them a brief of social engineering and have them go and find out how they want to learn. So I think as we go along, and that's how we found the outliers in that course. We found brilliant people doing brilliant things. And again, I think this is something that can be replicated everywhere. We start with giving very few pieces of information, exactly what you want, exactly the basic information, and you start giving people the freedom to move along. And I think students are far smarter than anybody can imagine, and they will find a way to find out what they need to find out.
Sultan, you want to add?
Yes, but I just, I'm always...
See what happens when you give people freedom.
So if you give me freedom, actually, Ali was one of the outliers that in Yambo. So when I was a high school teacher, he was one of the brilliant students that I was privileged to teach.
All right, I think we have about a minute left. If we don't, do we have any additional questions? If we don't, I think it would be a good time for me to really thank all of our panelists. Really, this has been a wonderful experience. As I expected, we didn't stick to our script, but we somehow managed through our own circuit to touch on most of the topics that we wanted to touch on. Thank you, Dr. Taghreed, Dr. Charlotte, Dr. Arwa, and Dr. Sultan for really a wonderful dialogue, and also for the audience for, I noticed you were always riveted on what our panelists were saying, and for participating in the Q&A session. Thank you very much. Now I still have one more mission to do.
Okay, so that's it for the evening. We don't want to keep you for any longer. Thanks for coming and have a good night.